All right, so what we want to do is create a new file. We're going to click here. And under our file, we have some parameters. You guys are not doing this right now. You're watching. Thank you. So 5 inches wide, 13.5 tall, and 3/4 inch thick. I have the parameters written on the left side of the board up here for you as well. And this is all in relation to a X, Y, Z axis. Okay, so we have our X axis here. Our Y axis is in relation to our height in this case for this project, X axis width, and then our Z is going to be our thickness. We can view this in a 3D manner here. There's our 3D tab up here. So we're going to set that up. Our datum position is always, at least for right now, going to be in the bottom left-hand corner here. We always want that selected. It should be default. And the Z0 position, when we set our machine outside, is going to be on the top of the surface. And we'll go over that when we set it up. All we're working on right now is drafting. So we set that up, we hit OK, and then we immediately hit File, Save As. And you want to type in 23, last name, and then you can put your period, clock, and then period. So this is for you guys would be 4, right? Hit save. So go ahead and do that right now. So the first thing I'm going to show you is how to add either text, numbers, letters, whatever. A lot of students like adding your name, some wording, and that's simply with this text box right here. So I'm going to click the text box, and I'm just going to write in my last name for now. And there's a couple ways we can do it. We can have horizontal text. If you want to create a vertical text, just simply by putting a letter and then hitting the Enter key and then going down, you can do it that way. I'm going to keep it horizontal. There are options in the different fonts that will allow you to change the orientation of the text. Keep in mind this text needs to not be too ornate like in Old English or anything that's crazy, because this is very small. Well, very, very compact lettering on the side of your clock. You don't have a lot of design space, and that machine, the width of the line still has a width. It's very fine, but it'll look sloppy. So for instance, when you come down here and you pick something like that, that is probably not going to go over well. Not just because it's jagged, but the lines are very close to each other. And then again, getting more ornate. I don't know what's down here, but I would stay with something simple. It doesn't have to be boring, just, or at least that has the correct spacing. Okay. Lots of different options. We're not here to pick out an option for today. Just try to get it done. So I'll pick that. Hit OK. Hold on. I'm going to close. I'm going to hit OK. Whoops. Close that out. So then as far as manipulating, it doesn't have to be the right size. We can stretch it out. So by double clicking on any vector or any picture or drawing, you have uniform expansion there on the X and Y axis. By clicking the corners, we can shrink it, just on the X, compact it that way, or expand and compact on the Y that way. We can play with it lots of different ways. And then simply by holding the middle down, I can move it around and space it out. So just select a real quick text and we'll move on. So now I'm going to teach you guys how to arc your font. Some students like to create an arc on their font. It's pretty straightforward. A couple steps here. I'm going to create a vector under here, my toolpath or my vector files here, selections. I'm going to hit the circle tool. And the easiest way to create the circle is just once you click that, come over to your workpiece here and just click and drag any size and then close it right away. And now I have the ability, just like I showed you with the lettering, to move it around, expand it to whatever arc you want. But now in order to run the lettering over the arc, we're going to split this circle into 2 separate vectors. Remember, vector is just a line of any lines, whether it's lettering, pictures, whatever. So we're going to, by selecting the circle, I'm going to right click with my mouse. I'm going to hit node edit. I'm going to right click here and cut the vector, and right click here and cut the vector. I'm now done. I want to escape. And now I have 2 separate vectors. So when we're selecting stuff, you guys have a couple options. I can drag boxes around it, or I can simply click on something, hit shift to select something else. In this case, I want my name to go on this arc. Now the way it orientates it, I'm not going to be concerned with. I'm not going to get into why I may flip it upside down or put it on the arc right. But when I click this icon right here, the ABC text on a curve, that's going to put on there. It's upside down, not a big deal. If it is or isn't, you can flip it to the other side by simply checking that box. Now we have some options over here. We can do it on the curve, meaning on the middle line, below the line, Most of the time, I'll probably be above the line for something this small, but it's up to you. It's in the middle, and I can align it to the curve, meaning that it's going to tilt it so it rides to the curve versus keeping it vertical. And then finally, you have some spacing options. By increasing this bar here, you'll increase the spacings. So why don't you guys go ahead and play with that for a second. So once we're done with the arcs, I like to just clean up my file as I go. I'm going to delete my arcs and get them out of the way. Like that. And again, you can decide where you want to move this. Something to keep in mind, we're not going to design too close to any of our borders. We want space. You can try to center it up. Just make sure if it looks pretty good, you can check that. There's a measuring tool right here to measure stuff to make sure you're the same distance away. There is a grid option I'll show you later so you can line up with dots. But let's just get that away. Now we're going to move on to what a lot of you guys find pretty interesting is the picture aspect. So I'm going to bring up a Google homepage here. Let's come over here. And what we're going to do is search for images. So I'm just going to do a pumpkin because it's Halloween. I'm going to go to images. And so pay attention here. We're going to use a tool function on here to filter the pictures. Not all pictures are the same. We want to bring in a picture that our program is able to trace to create vectors. So you could even type in, if you look up here, an outline. That's one way to do it. But really what we want to do is come over here and go to Tools. And we're going to pick a high resolution image. That's a large image. It's not large in measurement. It's large in resolution. We're going to pick black and white. And we're going to pick a type. Sometimes a clip art is nice, or even a line drawing. So I will pick something. Let's see what's going to give us some. This one will probably be kind of fun. Pick something simple. I'm going to do this one for. I'll pick this one. So the fastest way to check an image is to click on it. What we're looking for is not a lot of pixelation. Nice smooth lines. This one's pretty clean. So I'm going to right click it and copy images. I will show you later what a bad picture looks like. And then I'm going to right click in here and paste. Remember, whoops, did I not do it? Oh, there it is. Okay, perfect. And same thing, you can size your picture, bring them down. Now all we're going to do is simply ask the program to trace the lines of the picture to create these vectors. Vectors, again, are just lines that the CNC machine, that we can program the CNC machine to follow. So that's simply by clicking on this bird icon right here. I need to have my file selected. And I click on the bird icon. I want it black and white. I want to, oops, I didn't select it. So it'd help if I had it selected. There we go. Let's try that again. And I want to preview it. And it's going to make these lines. That looks good to me. Apply, and I want to close out right away. Okay. Go ahead and do. So here's my pumpkin. I now have a drawing, a picture file. I can move out of the way. And I have my line drawing. There's a couple things we can do. We can either move this out of the way, or we can kind of we need to get familiar with layers. Layers are a way of just associating different vectors or pictures on our file and just moving them out of the way. So right now it assigned this picture, it created a new layer for it. That's our bitmap layer. If I just uncheck the light bulb, it goes away. I like to do that because down the road, if you mess something up in your file and you're editing it later and you want that picture there, it's better just to turn it off than delete it. Okay, and now we're to our vector file. Okay, so there we go. Not going to talk about editing pictures. We'll get into that later. So now we're on to the fun part. We're going to create a toolpath. And we're going to create the most simple toolpath, which is a profile toolpath. If we look over here, we have this tab here. It says toolpaths in the top right. These are auto hide, auto close. So I scroll over, it should pop up. If you want it to stay open, there's a little pin button here. Hit that pin button, and so it doesn't auto hide. Either way, it's there. And we're going to click on this top icon here. We're going to highlight everything first that we want a toolpath. And that's our profile toolpath. I have a lot of these parameters. I know it's like, oh my gosh, what's all this stuff on the right? I have most of it up on the left-hand side of the board here. I'll talk about it as I go. So your start depth is going to be the top of the wood where we had that datum point set earlier. That's 0. That's our start depth. Our cut depths are in positive numbers, but that's how deep the bit's going. So 0.03. So if we look at the wood here, I'm going to draw an uneven piece of wood here. Our V-bit, it's going to be a V-bit, which we'll talk about in a second, is going to carve into the wood like that. There's our V-bit. And that's the engrave tool. We call it engrave tool that we're going to do there. So that is selected right here. If you need to change it, it's over here on this side, engrave. The only parameters you really need to be concerned with are right in here. And I have those on the side of the board. It's 12,000 RPM. So that bit is turning at 12,000 revolutions per minute. It's moving at 100 inches per minute. That bit will move back and forth on the axes when it's trying to cut stuff out. That's how fast it moves. And the plunge rate is how fast it'll dive down. Again, it can move at 100 inches per minute. I'm not going to get into feeds and speeds too in depth, but they are almost everything when it's CNC work is concerned on the machine. So I'm going to hit OK. That looks good. And then the last option you really need to decide is, do you want it to cut on the line, inside, or outside? We're going to pick on the line for right now, and I'm going to hit calculate. So just these few things up here, I have most of them written on the board. Hit calculate. Okay. So what we see here, the blue lines is the tool path of the machine. The red lines is the travel of the machine when it's not cutting. So you can see it starts here, tries to be efficient the way it cuts out and goes forward. If we want to preview that, we can preview the visible toolpath, the one that's checked. In this case, we only have one. It's our profile. That's what it's going to show it is. Just stuff to keep in mind. We start getting real tight here. Designs are real tight, not a lot of space. There's going to be little slivers of wood left over, and we try to avoid little tiny slivers in our design. But overall, this looks pretty good. If you guys want to play with that toolpath a little bit, you can go back here and double-click it. Brings up all the options, and this is where we can kind of play with the inside-outside. So let's try outside as a comparison. I need to recalculate it, assuming everything's still highlighted in my 2D view here. Go back to 3D view, and let's go back to toolpath. So I'm going to try outside. I'm going to recalculate it, and we can see the difference now. So watch that, reset the preview, and then preview the visible. A lot more blocky lettering, and the pumpkin still looks pretty good. I'd probably almost go with that just because my letters are more defined. So you guys can play with that later. But now I'm going to show you a second toolpath. So we're going to come back here to this screen under toolpaths, and we're going to go one to the right, and that's the pocket. What a pocket's going to do is it's going to cut out everything inside the boundaries, whatever those boundaries are. In this case, it will probably cut out all these pieces here, leaving the eyes and the nose and the mouth hole, I believe. I have to look closer. But it'll definitely should cut out my lettering here. So that was pretty simple. If you've already set up your parameters, you're just going to do a 0.03 depth again. This should all stay the same, and I hit calculate. And then we can see here the blue, I was wrong, it was the opposite with the mouth and nose. The blue is where again, the tool is going to cut. So let's check that one out and preview that one. Now when we preview this, don't preview all because you're going to get both of them. I just want to preview my pocket for now. And I also want to reset my picture because I don't want to see all that cutting out. So I'm going to reset my preview. It blanks it out. I check pocket, and I preview the visible. And there it is. Now you can see it's kind of carving it out a little bit. It works really well. Now, just as a thought here, if I go back to my profile, and I had those lines on the, excuse me, never mind. So I'm getting ahead of myself. So that's a pocket. The other thing we do with pocket that's kind of fun, getting ahead of myself, is we can drop a circle or a border around stuff. Let's do this. Close. Okay. And so once I have my border set up, what I can do is I can drag and just highlight, let's say that. Maybe I want to do a profile on my lettering, and I want to pocket this out. You can mix toolpaths. You can certainly have more than one. I'm going to create a second pocket using these two highlighted. Now we're going to see it's going to create the reverse. Now the mouth and nose are raised, and everything around is cut out. If you want to preview that again, reset your preview and just preview the visible. So just a different look. It's cutting everything else out. Some students will border their whole thing and just leave everything raised. But note that when I have pocket 2, you should keep track and say, border pocket or something like that, okay? And this will just be regular pocket and a regular profile. And then you can decide, you can mix and match and decide what you want to use. So once you have decided that you like your toolpaths, it's now time to save those toolpaths to a thumb drive, or external thumb drive, so we can use on the CNC machine. That icon is here in Save Toolpath. It's in our Toolpaths tab. We hit Save Toolpath. We want to make sure our post processor says CWI Professor, and you only want to save the toolpath that you want to run. You can save multiple toolpaths to one file, but say I just want my pocket and those two right there, I can save those two. I can just save one. Once I'm happy with what I want, I save the toolpaths. I want to, let me back up, output all visible toolpaths in one file. Save toolpath to your USB drive.